small town, you live the rest of your life as a tourist. Going from one small pond to one massive ocean just felt so exciting. And to me, that place was always, without a shadow of a doubt, London. The possibility of seeing a celebrity on any street corner, to the hundreds of designer shops just lining the street. And I mean, the Queen lived there, so it must be exciting, right? You see, as I get older, I realise that was all just built on stereotypes and make-believe, but when I was younger, I really thought that the day I made it to London was the day that I made it. But anyway, we'll get there. You see, that's always one question I had. Why would I want to leave this small town and go to this bigger place? And I think that's where the story really begins, is that to me, London wasn't just this idea, but it was this place about escapism. Because you see, if there's one thing that you should know about a small town, or growing up in a small town, is that it's very easy to realise when you don't fit in. You don't want to wear the same clothes, you don't want to laugh at the same jokes, and you don't want to kiss the same boys, or boys in general. And it's something that starts to dawn on you from a very young age, and it's something that no one else talks about. Because if everyone else fits in, why don't I? And no one ever spoke about not fitting in. I mean, if anything, my dad grew up in my small town, my grandmother grew up in my small town, and my great-grandmother didn't grow up in my small town, but my great-grandfather did. And it's one of those where you have this embedded sense that you are the only odd one out. And so you don't tell anyone. You let it eat you up inside, and you start to pretend that, yeah, I want to live here. I'd never want to leave here. I used to make dream plans about owning this one house on the corner of a street opposite from a massive park just because I saw a zip line in the front garden once, and I used to tell everyone that that's the house I want to grow up in, that's the house that I want to have kids in. And no one questioned it because that's what everyone else in the town was saying. But then it comes to a point where you can't stop faking it, and you realise that you aren't the same as everybody else, and it really fucks you up. And long story short, I took it all personally. It really got to me, and it ate me up inside, and I just questioned who I was and what I was doing. And barely life identity crisis. And again, long story short, but I remember becoming very suicidal. I need to get away from it all. But again, who can I tell these things to? If no one else feels this way, then it is just me, and that's my fault. That's my problem. And then again, it comes to a point of how can I show these people that I'm struggling without actively telling them? And that's how I came up with a plan. Instead of telling people I wanted to kill myself, instead of telling people that I just couldn't do it anymore, I came up with a plan. And I would instead tell people I wanted to buy a one-way ticket to London. Just go there and never come back and never talk to anyone. I want to live in a completely different place. And everyone took it at face value. No one ever questioned it. No one ever left the town, so they thought it was great that I would be the one to leave. And that's what I did for a few years. I would tell people that I wanted to go to London. I would tell people a lot that I wanted to go to London, actually. And no one said anything. And I got to keep up this false facade of feeling horrible about myself and who I was, and if I even was who I thought I was, and all that shit. And then I went to college. I was 16. And I remember someone asked me my life plans, because that's what they do when you're a fucking teenager. They just ask you about the rest of your life when you've barely had time to experience any of your own. And I told them the same thing I told anyone else, was that I want to go to London. I want to get away from it all. I want to leave the north and fucking go wherever. And someone turned to me and went, "So what do you want to do?" I'm sorry? Yeah, when you go to London, like, what do you want to do? Like, my sister lives there and she gets up just like some mad shit. So like, what would you want to do if you go there? And I just froze. how do you talk about a future that you don't plan on having? How do you express that you've never looked into it that far because you never thought that you'd make it that far? And so on the spot, I remember just turning around and having to fucking come up with something and saying, I think I'll just explore. You know, that's the beauty of a big city, is there's so many things to do. I'll do anything. And she told me something to do. She told me one place that I should go to. It's just a small place, just this small church in the middle of a town that her sister thinks just looks pretty cool. And then she walked off. And to her, that was probably an innocent conversation. It meant nothing. But I remember going home that day and thinking, it actually sounds quite nice. Something to do to get away from it all. Maybe I'll write that down. And that's when I realised something that started to creep up when I kind of left my small town to go to a college outside of that town. And that was, people started recommending me stuff to do. People started to break down this barrier that I so carefully built myself. And they were recommending me so much shit to do in this city that I'd never been to. And it was insane, because without people even realising that they were doing it, with this plan that I had to completely end it all, people were giving me reasons to keep going. And it was insane, and I felt a way I've never felt before about a place that I'd never been to. And so this city of escapism turned into this city of hope, which again is wild because it's London. There's nothing really that special about London when you kind of look back at life, but anyway, we'll get there. And so life goes on, and instead of telling people this as an excuse, instead of telling people I want to go to London as some kind of defence mechanism, I start asking because I want an answer. I want them to tell me something to do while I'm there. I want someone to just reach out a hand without even knowing they're doing it. And over the past few years, that's what a lot of people have done. I've asked people, or I've told people, I've always wanted to go to London, and they'll tell me a shit ton of things to do and places to see and people to meet and, you know, celebrities they've spotted on street corners. And it's helped me through. And that's when I realised that I'm 22 now. I've moved across the country to follow what I thought was the love of my life, but that didn't end well, but that's okay. We made it. And I realised that I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared of this small town mentality coming to eat me up. If anything, I'm excited by what lies ahead. And so I thought I'd do something for myself, for my younger self. I thought I would just grab a return journey to London to explore and see where the next day would take me and make use of a future that I never thought I had.
Oh, by the way, I tried that word lab, I can't do it, I'm special. Can't do it. You can't do what? Yeah, see that word? You know the three-letter one? I can't do a three-letter one. I can't do it, yeah. No, but why are all five letters, though? Huh? All five. No, you're doing word cooking. Huh? You're doing word cooking.
The next station is Westminster. The Waterloo and City line is hard closed in this direction between Waterloo and London. An alternative route station staff.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. No!
I got a 5.
There was one.
Oh, I didn't get that one, by the way. What was the one I didn't get?
This is Westminster. The next station is Embankment. This is a Circle Line train via Tower Hill and Liverpool Street.
There's no way getting 6 or 8.
What's 6?
That's not a word, is it?
Explain the 4 letters. I can't do it, I can't do that bit. Now listen, I'm a number numbers guy. I'm not a letters guy. I can't do them. There we go.
Tastes horrible. But it doesn't. No, I'm not fine. Tastes it.
So then I spoon tonight.
Yes. Aren't they all in Dublin?
7 Dublin.
Wait, is that only 11?
The next station is closed in both directions between Waterloo and Banff.